The ignored warning the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was crowded. Dozens of alien races had gathered from across the galaxy. Bright lights filled the room, and strange languages echoed through the massive chamber. It was rare for so many species to meet in one place, but today was different. They had come to discuss a problem named humanity. At the center of the room stood Admiral Koresh, a tall reptilian alien with dark green scales and cold yellow eyes. He had fought in many wars and seen things most beings could never imagine. But nothing had ever made him as uneasy as the humans of Earth. He cleared his throat and spoke, his voice calm but heavy. "I bring a warning. The human ships are not ordinary vessels. They are something else." The council members laughed. A bird-like alien named Counselor Varnok flapped his wings and grinned. "Koresh, you grow old. These humans barely joined the galactic map a few cycles ago. Their ships are small, slow, and primitive. What are you afraid of?" But Koresh didn't smile. He pressed a button, and a large hologram appeared in the middle of the room. It showed a battle that had happened near a distant star system. The video was shaky, taken from a fleeing scout ship. In it, 3 human ships floated in space, surrounded by a dozen alien warships. The alien ships fired their plasma weapons, sending bright blue beams through space. The human ships did nothing. The beams hit them and vanished. The room went silent. The ships didn't have shields. They didn't dodge. They didn't return fire. And yet, nothing touched them. Then, something impossible happened. The human ships moved in a way no ship ever should. They folded and twisted space around themselves, disappearing and reappearing behind the enemy ships. One by one, the alien warships vanished, as if being erased from reality. Within seconds, the battle was over. The human ships floated, alone in the darkness, untouched. Koresh looked around the room. "You see? These ships don't follow our laws of physics. They move like predators. They don't need shields. They don't even need to fire weapons. I have seen them survive inside a star's atmosphere and come out unharmed." Counselor Varnok scoffed. "A trick of faulty recordings. Your mind plays games with you, Admiral." Other council members murmured in agreement. They thought it was nonsense. Old Koresh had finally gone mad, they whispered. A younger alien captain named Vorak stood up. His gray skin shimmered in the light, and his sharp fangs showed as he grinned. "If these human ships are so dangerous, let me deal with them. I will take a fleet to Earth and bring back their wrecks as proof of their weakness." The council cheered, clapping their claws, wings, and tendrils. It was decided. Vorak would lead an attack on the humans and end this silly fear. Koresh's heart sank. He knew what would happen. But no one listened to old soldiers anymore. As the council dismissed him, Koresh walked to the giant windows overlooking space. Countless stars sparkled in the distance. He whispered to himself, "They don't understand. These ships, they think." He remembered the one message intercepted from a human commander during a skirmish. Warning acknowledged. Engage at your own risk. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. But the galaxy had always believed humans were a weak, backward race. Just a few cycles ago, they didn't even have faster-than-light travel. How could they build ships like this? It made no sense, and perhaps that was the danger. As Vorak's fleet prepared to depart, Koresh tried one last time. "Listen to me. These are not ordinary ships. You will not return." But his words were lost in the noise of celebration. Council had made up its mind. Vorak boarded his flagship, a mighty battleship called Dreadstorm, followed by dozens of heavy cruisers and destroyers. The fleet glided into the stars, engines glowing brightly. Koresh stood alone, watching them disappear into the void. Deep in space, human ships waited. They didn't move. They didn't send warnings. They simply existed, silent, patient, and deadly. Koresh could feel a cold shiver run down his spine. He had seen war for centuries, but this was different. These ships were not just machines. They were hunters. And the galaxy was about to learn that some warnings should never be ignored. Asterisk. First encounter the stars hung silent as Vorak's fleet moved deeper into human space. Dozens of powerful alien warships cruised through the darkness, their engines earning a bright blue trail behind them. Inside his command chamber, Vorak stood tall, his cold gray eyes locked on the front display. "Any sign of the humans?" he asked. A young officer turned, his voice nervous. "Nothing yet, Captain. Sensors show nothing." That was odd. In any other sector of space, there would be merchant ships, cargo haulers, patrol units, something. But here, it was empty. Too empty. Vorak grinned. Cowards. They must be hiding. His fleet continued forward, deeper toward Earth's claimed territory. The ships formed a tight formation, ready for battle. Weapons systems were armed, shields raised. They expected a fight, but nothing came. Then, without warning, alarms blared. Unidentified contacts dead ahead. Dozens of strange shapes appeared on the sensors. No lights, no engine trails, no signals. They moved without sound, without heat, gliding through space like shadows. The bridge went silent. On the main screen, a group of human ships emerged from the darkness. They were nothing like Vorak had expected. These weren't bulky war cruisers or fragile scout ships. These were sleek, black vessels that seemed to absorb the very light around them. They had no visible weapons, no glowing engines, no bright colors. They floated there, still silent, watching. Vorak sneered. "They dare show themselves like this? Send a transmission." His officer activated the channel. "Humans, this is Captain Vorak of the Hegaran War Fleet. You are ordered to surrender your vessels immediately, or face complete destruction." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a voice came through. It was calm, cold, and mechanical. "Warning acknowledged. Prepare for consequences." The message ended. Vorak laughed. "Fire at will." In an instant, the alien fleet unleashed a storm of plasma blasts and torpedoes. Bright streaks of energy tore through the void, racing toward the human ships. But nothing happened. The beams disappeared before touching the ships, as if the space around them swallowed the attacks. The torpedoes lost their locks and drifted off course, as if confused by something unseen. Vorak's grin faded. "Impossible." Fire again. Another wave of attacks lit up the dark. This time, Vorak watched closely. The human ships didn't move, didn't activate shields. The enemy weapons simply vanished. Then the human ships began to move, but they didn't glide like normal ships. They bent space itself. The stars behind them twisted and shimmered as the vessels blinked from one position to another. Here, there, everywhere, like predators circling prey. Vorak's officers panicked. "They're surrounding us." "I can't get a lock on them, Captain." A deep fear spread through the fleet. Without firing a single visible weapon, the human ships struck. One by one, Vorak's ships vanished. No explosions, no debris. Just a sudden, cold emptiness where a ship had been docked. It was as if the vessels were being erased from reality. Vorak's heart pounded. "Retreat! Full engines, get us out of here." But it was too late. The human ships closed in, moving like hunters who had already claimed victory. Vorak's communications officer screamed. "Incoming transmission, Captain," Vorak shouted. "Put it through." On the screen, a human figure appeared. A man with cold, gray eyes, standing aboard one of the black ships. His face showed no anger, no pride, only calm certainty. Spoke softly. "You were warned." Then the screen went dark. One by one, Vorak watched as his fleet disappeared, the ships vanishing without a trace. Only his flagship remained. His crew stared at him in horror. Vorak slumped into his command chair, defeated. He opened a last desperate message to the council. These aren't ships. They're monsters. We should have listened. The message cut off. Far away, in the council's grand hall, Admiral Koresh stood by the window. He watched the distant stars, feeling a cold weight in his chest. He knew what had happened. The warning had been ignored. And now, the galaxy would pay the price. Asterisk. The battle begins. The darkness of space felt heavier now. Varek's final message raced through the galaxy, reaching the grand hall of the Galactic Council. The council members gathered again, their faces pale, their voices hushed. Admiral Koresh stood in the center, his yellow eyes filled with sadness. "I told you," he said quietly, but no one listened. The message from Vorak's flagship played once more on the giant screen. These aren't ships. They're monsters. We should have listened. Then nothing. Vorak's entire fleet, one of the strongest the council had, was gone. The room was silent. Counselor Vardak, who had laughed before, now trembled. "Send the home fleets. All of them," he whispered. Within hours, the largest battle fleet in galactic history was gathered. Hundreds of warships from every known race prepared for battle. Massive cruisers, heavy carriers, and deadly war dreadnoughts lined up in space, their weapons armed and ready. The plan was simple: attack the humans before they reached any major world. Destroy them before they destroyed everything. In deep space, the alien fleets waited. And then the human ships came. They arrived without fanfare, without signals, without warnings. Dozens of black, silent vessels slipped out of the darkness like living shadows. They didn't form a battle line. They didn't call for peace. They just came. The alien commanders felt a chill move through their ships. "This is it," one of them muttered. "All batteries, open fire." The alien fleets unleashed a storm of weapons. Thousands of plasma beams, torpedoes, and energy blasts raced through space, lighting up the darkness. But just like before, nothing touched the human ships. The weapons vanished mid-flight, twisted into nothing by invisible forces. One by one, the human ships began to move, but not in straight lines. They blinked, folded space around themselves, and appeared behind. The alien fleets. In seconds, the battle became a slaughter. Alien ships vanished. No explosions, no wreckage. They simply ceased to exist. Whole squadrons disappeared, leaving empty space where mighty fleets had floated just moments ago. The alien commanders shouted orders, but it didn't matter. Weapons wouldn't lock on. Shields failed without warning. Engines shut down on their own. The human ships struck with terrifying precision, and still, they never spoke. On board one alien dreadnought, Captain Sarlacc gripped the arms of his chair as his officers screamed. "They're inside the ship." But there was nothing on the scanners. Lights flickered. The walls began to hum with a strange vibration. Then, silence. The dreadnought was gone. Across the fleet, ships vanished one after another. The aliens realized something terrible. These weren't weapons of war. These were predators. Ships designed not just to kill, but to erase, to wipe away the very memory of their enemies. Admiral Koresh, watching from the Grand Hall, knew what would come next. A single transmission came through the Council's emergency channel. It was a simple message, spoken by a human voice. "You were warned. We are not conquerors. We are the consequence." Then silence. The last of the alien fleet was gone. Not a single human ship was damaged. Not a single message of surrender had been heard. In a few short hours, The might of the Galactic Alliance had been erased from existence. The battle was over. But it wasn't a battle, Dot. It was a lesson. And the galaxy would never forget Asterisk. The true nature of human ships. The galaxy had gone silent. The great war fleets of the Council were gone. Not destroyed, gone. Erased from existence, as if they had never been there at all. No wreckage, no survivors. Not even a trace on long-range sensors. Dot. In the Grand Hall, fear gripped the remaining Council members. The chamber that once echoed with arrogance was now filled with whispers of terror. Admiral Koresh stood before them, his old face tired, his voice heavy. Now you will listen. No one argued. He pressed a control, and a new hologram appeared in the air. It showed strange, ancient-looking images. Human ships floating near dead stars, moving in impossible ways. Some seemed to shimmer, as though half existing in another dimension. Koresh spoke. You asked what these ships are. You called them war machines, vessels of conquest. But you were wrong. The room remained silent. Koresh continued. They are not ships. They are alive. Gasps spread across the council chamber. Counselor Varnog, his feathers drooping, whispered. Alive? How? Koresh pointed to one of the images. Decades ago, humans discovered something the rest of us feared to touch. A form of technology combined with living tissue. Not cloned, not programmed, something grown. Ships that think, feel, and evolve. A younger counselor asked in a trembling voice, but why? Why would anyone create something like that? Koresh's yellow eyes narrowed. Because humans were always different. They fear nothing. Where other races refuse to cross certain lines, humans do it without hesitation. They merged machine with living nerve tissue, creating vessels with minds of their own. Faster than thought, learning with every encounter. He showed them a short recording, a human ship floating near a neutron star. The ship should have been torn apart by the gravity and radiation, but at WASN, single quotes T, it moved calmly, adjusting itself in ways no ordinary vessel could. The star's deadly energy bent around it like soft mist. Koresh spoke softly. They are longer tools. They choose their battles. They think faster than any living brain, calculate outcomes beyond our understanding. Counselor Varnok's voice cracked. But can they be reasoned with? Koresh turned to face them. You don't reason with a storm. You don't plead with fire. These ships have no hatred, no fear, no pride. They exist for one purpose, to protect their creators. And when a threat is detected, it is removed. Another counselor asked, But we never meant to invade Earth. Koresh shook his head. The humans warned you. Not once, many times, and you laughed. The counselors lowered their heads in shame. Koresh stared into the distance, as if seeing something no one else could. These ships, they don't just kill, they race. Every battle they fight, every enemy they face, they remove them completely. No records, no debris, no memories. Entire fleets wiped from history itself. A cold silence filled the room. For the first time, the proud leaders of the galactic races felt truly small. Koresh ended the recording. The final image was of a human ship, silent and still, floating alone in the void, as if watching. He spoke one last time. They are not conquerors, not tyrants. They are the consequence of arrogance. And they will not stop until they are sure no threat remains. In that moment, the Council understood. The galaxy was no longer ruled by alliances or empires. It now belonged to beings who would never seek power, never ask for surrender, and never give second chances. And they called them human ships. Asterisk. The last stand, the galaxy had no other choice. After losing its finest fleets and countless ships without a trace, the remaining leaders of the Council gathered for what they called the last stand. every surviving world sent its remaining warships. Old cruisers, ancient destroyers, even civilian cargo haulers were armed and sent into space. The combined fleet was enormous. A wall of ships stretched across the void, thousands of vessels glowing under the cold stars. For a brief moment, there was hope. In the command center of the flagship Iron Crest, Admiral Relkin, a large, stone-skinned alien with deep scars across his face, spoke with steel in his voice. "We fight not for power, not for pride, but for survival. Today, we face monsters." His officers nodded, though their eyes were heavy with fear. Sensors scanned every corner of space. Energy weapons were armed, shields raised, and every ship prepared for what was coming. Then, the darkness moved. From the endless black, the human ships arrived. They didn't jump in with engines flaring or bright light. They simply appeared. Dozens of them, floating in perfect silence, their dark hulls reflecting no light. There were no signals, no battle formation. They just came. On the bridge of the Iron Crest, an officer's voice shook. "Targets acquired. But sir, no readings. It's like they're not there." Admiral Relkin's hand tightened around the railing. "It doesn't matter. Fire everything." And the last stand began. Thousands of alien ships fired at once, releasing a storm of plasma, missiles, laser beams, and kinetic rounds. The sky lit up like 1,000 suns, filling the void with energy. But it was pointless. Just as before, the human ships made no effort to dodge. The weapons never reached them. Some attacks simply vanished. Others twisted in mid-space and shot off into nothing. Then the human ships moved. They split apart, gliding through the galaxy's largest fleet like shadows through mist. One by one, alien ships began to disappear. No explosions, no screams. A flash of distortion, and a ship was gone. Thousands of lives erased in silence. On the Iron Crest, officers screamed, "They're inside our formation. We can't lock on. Our systems aren't responding. The fleet's falling apart." Admiral Relkin gritted his teeth. "We die with honor." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "Brothers and sisters of the galaxy, fight to your last breath." But the fight was never fair. Alien ships fired blindly, hitting each other more than their enemy. Panic spread faster than orders. Some captains tried to flee, but their ships were erased before they could turn. From orbit around a distant planet, the council members watched in horror. The galaxy's last fleet was vanishing. And still, not a single human message came. No demand for surrender. No voice for peace. Only silent death. In one final desperate move, the Iron Crest charged directly at the largest human ship. It was the only one that stood completely still, as if daring them to come. Admiral Relkin roared, "For the galaxy!" The mighty ship's engines blazed as it closed the distance. Just before impact, the human ship moved, not forward, not sideways. It disappeared, and the Iron Crest was gone too. The last alien ship blinked out of existence. In the end, space fell silent. Only the human ships remained. Not a single alien vessel survived. No trace of weapons fire. No debris. No records. It was as if the galaxy's largest fleet had never existed. The human ships hovered in space, unmoving, their dark hulls gleaming like silent watchers. And then they turned and left. Not a word spoken, not a message sent. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over. And in the grand hall of the council, those who survived wept, because now they truly understood. You don't fight human ships. You survive them, if they allow it. Asterisk Aftermath and Human Message of the Stars were silent again. Across the galaxy, sensors picked up nothing. No alien ships, no fleet movements, no battles. Every sector once filled with ships and stations was now quiet. Space itself, seemed to hold its breath. In the once proud Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, only a few leaders remained. Many had fled. Some had lost their homeworlds. Others simply vanished, like their fleets. The great chamber was dim now, the lights lowered. No one spoke of victories, power, or alliances. Those days were over. Admiral Koresh stood alone at the center of the room. His old face looked even older now. Deep lines around his eyes, his shoulders heavy. He faced the giant window that opened to the stars. They looked different now, not welcoming. Not beautiful. Dangerous. A counselor spoke, his voice barely more than a whisper. Are they gone? Koresh didn't turn. No, they are watching. The room grew colder, though no one moved. For days, no one had heard a word from the humans. No demands for territory. No message of conquest. No threats. Just silence. And then, a single transmission arrived. It came without warning. Every planet, every station, every ship still working received it at the same time. The message played only once. On the Council's main screen, a human face appeared. A woman this time. Calm, expressionless. Her eyes cold like deep space. She spoke without anger. We are not invaders. We do not seek your lands, your resources, or your lives. But when threatened, we respond. You were warned, and you chose defiance. The image of destroyed fleets, erased planets, and empty space appeared behind her. She continued, Let this be the last lesson. The galaxy belongs to no one. It is shared or it is taken. You are permitted to survive. Remember this, Mercy. And then she was gone. The screen went black. The council chamber remained silent. No one spoke. No one dared. They all understood. This wasn't a victory for the humans. It wasn't conquest. It was consequence. From that day forward, no alien race spoke openly against humanity. No fleets approached their space. And wherever a dark, silent ship appeared in orbit, the people of that world lowered their flags and dimmed their weapons. It was the way of survival, now. In time, stories turned to whispers, and whispers turned to legend. The ships that were alive, the predators in the dark, the ones who didn't ask twice. And somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, the human ships drifted silently, watching, waiting, not because they wanted war, but because they remembered, and the galaxy knew one wrong move, and the stars would fall silent again. Asterisk, the forgotten survivor. The galaxy believed no one had survived the last stand, but they were wrong. On the far edge of a dead system, drifting among the shattered remains of asteroids, a single escape pod floated silently through space. Inside, Captain Vorak lay unconscious, his gray skin pale, his breathing shallow. Somehow, when his ship had vanished, the emergency pod had been thrown into deep space. No one knew. Not even the human ships. Days passed before Vorak's pod was found by a passing trade vessel. The merchant crew, a group of small, rodent-like creatures, pulled the pod aboard. They were terrified, not by the survivor, but by the stories now spreading across the stars. When Vorak opened his eyes, he saw the frightened faces staring down at him. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry, his body weak. The ships. Medic offered him water. Vorak took a slow breath and whispered the only words he could. Still out there. The merchant captain leaned in. Who? The humans? Vorak shook his head. Not humans. The ships. They're alive, and they watch. His voice cracked. They don't kill for power. They erase for safety. We thought we were hunters, but we were nothing. The merchant crew didn't know whether to believe him. But the fear in Vorak's eyes was something no lie could fake. He described what he had seen in those final moments. How space itself bent around the human ships. How his weapons refused to work. How entire fleets vanished without sound. as if eaten by the void. And worst of all, he spoke of the human message. A message not meant for survival. A warning. You're permitted to survive. Remember this, Mercy. The merchants shared nervous glances. One of them asked, "Do you think they'll come for us?" Vorak laughed bitterly. "They don't have to. They already know where you are. They always know." The merchant captain's fur stood on end. The escape pod was quickly jettisoned. Vorak was left drifting again, a curse the merchants dared not bring upon themselves. Some say the pod is still out there, lost between the stars. Others claim Vorak's warnings were recorded and spread in secret, passed quietly between captains. And smugglers, becoming forbidden tales told in dark corners of distant space stations. The message was always the same. Never cross the humans. Never approach their ships. And if you see a shadow where no shadow should be, it's already too late. The galaxy moved on. Trade resumed. New alliances were formed. But the memory of what happened in those dark days never fully disappeared. On quiet nights, when the stars seemed too still, old captains would glance nervously at their scanners. Because some things don't end. Some things wait. And the human ships are still watching, asterisk,